Welcome to Castle of Horror, the show dedicated to horror movies and awesomeness. This week, we kick off a new retrospective on Godzilla. Godzilla, the man himself, with the 2019 Godzilla King of the Monsters, not to be confused with the 1950s Godzilla King of the Monsters. Bear in mind, if you haven't seen today's movie, we're going to be talking about it from the perspective of horror fans who have seen it. So warning, spoilers ahead. From Denver, Colorado, I'm your host, Jason Henderson, editor of this summer's Castle of Horror anthology. With me from Austin is Tony Salvaggio, tech director at Rooster Teeth, lead singer and bassist of the band Deserts of Mars, and lead guitarist of the band Rise from Fire. Say hello, Tony.
Howdy.
Howdy. And also in Austin, writer of the long-running underground comic series Halloween Man and winner of the 2018 Best of Austin Award from the Austin Chronicle, Mr. Drew Edwards. Say hello.
Hello.
Hello and welcome back. And finally, also in Denver, as always, color commentary from attorney Julia Guzman of Guzman Immigration of Denver. Say hello, Julia.
Hello.
Hello. Bonsoir. Okay. Godzilla King of the Monsters, which, by the way, where Tony just was overseas, is called Godzilla 2 King of the Monsters, is a 2019 American monster movie directed by Michael Dougherty, written by the director Zach Shields and Max Borenstein. It's a sequel to the 2014 Godzilla, which unbelievably we did an episode on, and that means that we did an episode on that movie 5 years ago. It is the 35th movie in Godzilla. It's the 35th mainline Godzilla movie. The third film in Legendary's Monsterverse and the third Godzilla film to be completely produced by a Hollywood studio. It's got a big cast: Kyle Chandler, Vera Farmiga, Millie Bobby Brown, Bradley Whitford, for heaven's sakes, Charles Dance, who is always amazing, Zhang Ziyi, Ken Watanabe. It is dedicated to executive producer Yoshimitsu Banno and the original Godzilla suit performer Haruo Nakajima, both of whom died in 2017. In this film, the humans gather together to help Godzilla defeat King Ghidorah, who has been awakened with other titans to destroy the world or to take it over. So let's get our opening thoughts. Tony, as always, we turn to you for the first and last thoughts on, well, we won't force you to have the last thoughts, but about the first thoughts on how to think about Japanese monster movies. Godzilla King of the Monsters. Did you have a good time when you saw this? And what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I had a great time. It was fun. I saw it in Norway. I was on vacation. I saw it with Norwegian subtitles, which is interesting. Also, the concession stands in Norway at the Cineplex I went to anyway. Like, it's very interesting. It's like a mini, like 7-Eleven or concession stand. And you go in and pick up all your stuff, and all the popcorn's in these like little heated, like the opposite of a fridge. You know, like when you get a drink out of a fridge, it's like that, but it's heated, and you can pick, different buttered or not or whatever. So it was a fun experience. It was a novel experience seeing this. Unfortunately, I didn't get to see it in IMAX, which I wanted to.
Julia, you were totally stoked to go see this. You were like, you said, let's go watch it, even before it occurred to me to go watch it. So what were your thoughts?
I enjoyed a lot of things about it. I thought it was really fun. I thought the monsters were very realistic, very believable, but even more so than the people, and certainly more than the flying machines, because I felt like the planes and the helicopters physically made absolutely no sense. They were like, they were completely, well, I'll talk about more about that later. And so that part annoyed me. The reactions of the human beings annoyed me in a lot of cases, but I thought the monsters were fun, and I really enjoyed watching the battles and watching all the crazy effects, so it was definitely a fun time.
Drew, where did you come down?
So I've seen this movie twice. The first time, don't hate me, Tony, I saw it in IMAX, and it was
Drew.
It was beautiful. It was
That's
beautiful.
Cool.
I was so happy. And then I got online and I started seeing a lot of the reviews, which were kind of unkind. Like, for some reason, like the press really dogpiled onto this movie. So I was like, okay, maybe there's something I'm missing, because, like, okay, I'll admit I really enjoyed this movie, but I wasn't going to say that I was blind that there were certain deficiencies in it. But I was like, maybe I should go see this again, and I will really put on my movie critic's hat and I will watch it. And so I went and I watched it again, and I brought two friends with me just to get their reactions.
Yeah.
And I have to say, people who think that this is a bad movie, fake news, y'all. This movie is awesome. I don't care what anybody says. I love this movie. Like I just, it makes me irrationally happy. It might be that it's just like too dorky. Like, there is a lot of Godzilla fan service, and maybe that's just too much for the normies out there, but I don't fucking care. Like Tony, like I wept when the Mothra theme came on because like I was expecting the Godzilla theme. I didn't think they'd go there for Mothra. So like that stuff I really loved. Like I like the fact how like unapologetically it was this like fantasy world of giant monsters. In fact, I would say this is probably the closest. Actually, I'm not going to say even probably. This is definitely the closest that we have gotten to like one of the 1960s Godzillas out of any American attempt. Like this is so firmly in that like fantasy world of giant monsters. And it revels in it. Like the fact that you have characters saying things like Mothra, Queen of the Monsters, with total earnestness and zero irony. I love that. I can't wait to get this movie on Blu-ray so I can watch it anytime I'm feeling depressed, because it like really hits all the happy centers in my brain. So I may be a bad critic, but I feel like this movie made me a better person.
That's fantastic.
I think universally our motto has been like what you like. So I don't know if it makes you a bad critic. I think it makes you a person of movies.
Yes.
It makes me honest, at least.
You should always
I really love this movie. Yeah.
I hear you.
I really believe this movie. Okay, I just don't give a rat's ass what the critics say. Honestly, truly, I mean, so many because there's this thing now where there's this thing where a movie comes out, and because of the nature of the echo chamber, if the feedback is it leaves a little something to be desired, that'll rattle around in the internet, and then by the time 24 or 48 hours have passed, it's like the worst movie ever, and big negative headlines are being written in Variety and all that stuff, and that's just silly. This especially because movies aren't good or bad. There's a million things about it. This was a really, really strong movie, and Drew, I think you said it exactly right. You have to admire how perfectly this movie, with great seriousness and an attempt to make stuff look as real as you could get them, took on the notion of regal giant monsters like you would find in the 1960s monster movies, and absolutely without a doubt. First thing that I wanted to talk about that Tony, help me try to remember the way this works. It seems to me that in the old movies, and I don't remember how the 2014 movie dealt with this, but in the old Godzilla movies, even the ones of the 2000s period, like Destroya and all that stuff, it seems to me that it used to be that they were always filmed, like from over the shoulders of the monsters. So you always sort of looked at things, even though you had lots of human characters, when you were around the monsters, you always had kind of a monster's eye view of how things were. And this has been one of the chief complaints about it. Yeah?
I think the ones where they're fighting, they certainly suits. But there's certainly like 85 and a few others where things are stomping around. There's a lot of street level stuff, and even like when they introduce kids, like Megalon, there's a lot in in the second Godzilla movie. There's aliens and there's an android lady, and it depends. Also, when people talk about the human characters, oh my goodness, Japan has had a lot of cool stuff. And it's fun. For example, in Megalon, where you have a guy and his son, and there's scientists, and they're making Jet Jaguar, and then in Mechagodzilla, they're building Mechagodzilla, and Mothra, they're summoning up stuff, and there's all kinds of things going on. People summoning things, some scientists going to different planets, all that stuff. But there's also ones like King Ghidorah from I think it's the 90s one, if I remember correctly, where you have a cyborg who is running and they're obviously pulling him on a trailer.
Yes.
there's a World War II part where they go, "Wow, did you see that, Mr. Spielberg?"
Yes.
Like,
Oh, that's true.
wink at
Yes.
the camera. Like, so people who are very critical about this, perhaps I've seen people saying, well, I'm a big Godzilla fan and this did this or didn't do that. I want to rewatch many more of them
Yes.
before you make some of the criticisms. And you should, I mean, again, if it didn't work for you, that
I'm not at all rejecting this movie. I've actually seen this movie twice as well, and I actually really enjoyed it. But I'm just saying that one of the critiques people had is that sometimes they're confused because it's difficult to get. It's also a nice effect where you feel so overwhelmed by how big these creatures are, because these creatures are 400 feet tall, and the movie doesn't. The movie rarely sort of gets up on Godzilla's shoulders and sees it from his perspective, except around the end, when our heroes are hanging in an Osprey helicopter, so they're able to see over, like, at Godzilla's shoulder level.
First of all, they're doing it this way because we have the technology now where you can be down in the muck while the city's being destroyed around you, and they can make it very realistic.
Yeah.
And, I can understand, again, like Tony said, if it doesn't work for you, it doesn't work for you. To say that that's not in the spirit of Godzilla, I was having this conversation with an artist friend of mine, my friend John Goulson, at a comic book convention, because he didn't like this movie the way I liked it, and he was like, I'm trying to define what it is and what I like about Godzilla and what I don't like. And I was like, well, the thing is everybody seems to have this idea of what Godzilla is, but the fact of the matter is Godzilla, there's so many movies with Godzilla in it now that Godzilla is actually a lot of different things.
Boy, that's really well said.
It's perfectly acceptable for Godzilla to be this.
Yeah.
It's just like it's perfectly acceptable for him to be a campy hero who hangs out with giant robots, and it's perfectly acceptable for him to be a horror movie villain that makes people cry to the horrors of atomic destruction. He is all those things, and this is kind of a distillation of that, but it's not to say this isn't Godzilla. Okay, like when people said the 98 Godzilla wasn't Godzilla, that is more or less fair, because like that was really taking a massive shit on everything that fans were expecting from it.
Yes.
But this is a respectable distillation of everything that has come before it. And in fact,
and it has a huge amount of respect. I mean, the fact that this one hauls out the original Godzilla theme, and it sounds so great. It sounds so pure that you almost feel like it might be the original theme, even though I know it's a re-record and I know there are some subtle differences. It blew my mind.
All the Monarch outposts are numbered after release dates of different monster movies. They use a goddamn oxygen destroyer.
Yes.
Like you can tell the people who made this movie, for better or for worse, I've actually had people say that they thought it was too reverential of the first of the original movie. So I guess you're never gonna. That's the other thing. Godzilla has such a it's not Star Wars or Star Trek or any, but it does have a big enough fan base that for fuck's sake you're never going to please all of them. But
although Tony said it exactly right, that people really truly don't remember as much as they think they do, or I'm not even sure if people pretend to remember. Unless you're like Matt Frank and you're literally seems like you exist in the Godzilla universe. Oh, absolutely, yeah, no doubt. But you'll hear people people's memories of Godzilla will change. For instance, one of the complaints about 2014 was that there was not enough monster fighting, and it took a long time before the monsters fought. And, we covered King Kong versus Godzilla on this show. And let me tell you, the first hour of that movie is mostly drama with fishermen running around. I mean, there's
some third part Abbott and Costello comedy.
Right.
Precisely. I mean, I timed it when people were griping about that, and 20 minutes of Godzilla. I'm talking about even the stock footage where Godzilla's just kind of swimming and they reused parts of it.
Yes.
There's about 20 minutes tops. Like I think it topped out at like 30 out of a 90-minute movie.
Yeah.
So sometimes it was less than 15. And I did that because I was like, why are people? Have you seen a Godzilla movie? But the thing is, people don't watch them over and over. They have the memory of the fun fights.
Yes.
But unless you are a person like me, or maybe Drew or Matt Frank, you're not going to remember that all the throwaway, I wouldn't say throwaway, but to most people, the throwaway plot lines, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
So I did that on purpose. I was working freelance, so I could just put stuff on while I was working. And if you think 15 minutes out of a 90-minute movie is a lot of Godzilla, I don't know what to tell you.
Yeah.
Like,
well, I had one of my.
But I get it. But
go ahead, Drew. I'm sorry.
So one of my friends who saw this movie with was actually saying that he wished that the whole movie had just been monsters. And look, you'd be hard pressed to find somebody who is more obsessed with monsters than me, but I don't think that would actually work. And for its part, again, having seen this movie twice, I think the human plot works well. And like there's some, if you look at some of the stuff, like, and try to push it and kicking and screaming into the real world, there's actually makes sense. But James Bond movies don't always make perfect sense. The Fast and the Furious films surely don't fucking make sense.
Just to recap the human plot in this film, by the way, just so that we understand, you now have a group called Monarch, because I want to use this as a springboard to talk a little bit about Monarch. But a group called Monarch, which you've seen in a couple of movies before, who have been arguing now in front of the government that they're going to be needed to try to figure out a way to protect / get out of the way of the monsters and basically prepare the world to just live with the fact that these monsters are going to be around, versus those who want to figure out ways to destroy the giant monsters. And that's the big debate when some terrorists led by a surprise villain start doing some things to free all the old monsters, and that sets up a big duel between the original king of all monsters, Godzilla, and his rival for king of all monsters, which is the three-headed monster Ghidorah.
Can I do the surprise villain?
I if you like, yes, go ahead.
No, I loved this twist. That was really one of the few things I really loved about the human part of the story, is that you have the story of the parents who are estranged of Millie Bobby Brown, otherwise known as 11 from Stranger Things, and her mother has custody of her and is kind of in charge of this team of people who have been, I don't know, if somebody else can probably say it better than I can about what her position is exactly. But she's
a scientist.
Been working with the monsters and like kind of supervising them, making sure she's been working on this machine that can emit sounds that kind of can control them or attract them or something. I'm unclear exactly on what the machine does. All I know is that it's a magical machine. But there's this other guy who is going around wanting to wake up the monsters because he believes that the world is actually, or rather, he wants to wake up the monsters so they'll fight each other. And he kills a bunch of people at the lab that Millie Bobby Brown and her mother are at. Emma, I believe is her name, and takes the two of them away. And once Kyle Chandler was united with the other team to look for her and his daughter, they find out that in fact, or they actually confront her, and she actually is the one who triggers the release of one of the monsters, and you find out that she is in fact the big bad, and she wants some insane reason, she thinks that releasing all these monsters and having them fight each other is going to be the best way to save the planet from humans, because humans suck.
She has a rationality because wherever they go, plant life regrows.
Right. It somehow it rebuilds the earth when the monsters emit their monster radiation, basically. in the world. Seriously, true.
Sadly, they don't play, as far as I remember, a version of Save the Earth from Godzilla versus Hedorah, the small monster, or the thing, whichever one. because I really kind of wanted that. Or, oh man, they would have just even played it on the radio.
They're saving it for Godzilla versus Kong, Tony. They have to save something for
Maybe.
Godzilla.
I don't
Good
think
Lord.
so, but
You want to talk about a movie?
It is
Yeah, go
cool
ahead.
at the end. It is cool at the end that they show all the news clips of, hey, you know what we said? That monster crap is really happening.
Yes.
That was cool.
Yeah.
Rain really
love
liked
that
that.
Carnival.
I thought
One
that
of
was
them
awesome.
said something about Carnival Dream or something. The Carnival, and we just took a Carnival cruise ship, so that made me laugh in particular. Some Carnival ship encounters one of these.
Yeah, in the world as understood in the closing credits, the monsters really are cohabitating with Earthlings, and Godzilla is beating them back when they decide to wreck some cities, and the monsters will just like show up at places, and it's sort of a delightful future world that they lay out. But
They're for the people getting stomped. Those people
Right.
probably don't think it's so great. But
The thing is about
hey, the world's rebuilt from monsters, so suck it.
backtracking to what she's saying about how Norma Bates. I know that's not her real name, but I prefer to think of her as Norma Bates. Norma Bates is the actual real villain of this movie, which is, I didn't actually really come to that conclusion until the second. Julia is smarter than me in that respect, because it took me seeing this movie a second time, because I guess I was still stuck in the fact that Daddy Lannister was there, but he doesn't actually, if you want to be critical on a technical standpoint, he doesn't actually serve a purpose in the movie other than to kind of be her id. Like,
you're talking about Charles Dance. By the way, your Game of Thrones references are lost on me, I'm afraid. I feel terrible about that. But
Charles Dance is in Game of Thrones, which you at least have to be tangentially aware of.
I just looked it up on Wikipedia and I discovered that is the case. That's so.
But
I just picture the Pulp Fiction. You realize there's a thing called Game of Thrones. In this Game of Thrones is a Charles. Anyway, I haven't watched it either, but
I didn't know it either, because neither of us knows a thing about Game of Thrones.
Well,
so sad.
Democratic.
No, it's certainly not a thing where I'm like, I don't even own a TV.
No. Listen, my time is wasted with. Oh no, listen, I watch some stuff that is hot garbage. So don't.
No, mine. Yeah, mine isn't that I don't own a TV. It's that it's too violent for me.
Oh, that was Rain's thing, which makes it harder for me because I want to watch the whole thing.
It is very, very violent. But okay, keeping this on Godzilla.
And Charles Dance, sure, and whatever. Yeah.
Charles Dance is there because he is a more stereotypically villainous looking guy.
Yep.
And he distracts you from the fact that she is the real villain. And I guess, maybe that was accidental, but I firmly believe all the things that he's saying is the stuff that she wishes she could say out loud, but her daughter's there.
That's well said. Yeah,
that's my take on this, having seen this movie twice.
Yeah, his attitude is I've been a radical all my life. I am totally ready to burn the earth to the ground. People deserve it. Whatever comes next is bound to be better. The end. That is his complete. He's an eco-terrorist par excellence, and
he's Ra's al Ghul.
Yes, oh, absolutely. And the Joker sort of rolled into one. He wants it to burn. He doesn't even want to watch it burn. I don't get the impression that he's particularly sadistic. He just really, from some moral standing, believes that he needs to destroy the earth. That's crazy town. But
that's not what Emma believes too. She seemed to be saying that exact thing when she
basically is. She just can't be honest about. Well, that means, by the way, that daughter and husband, you and I we are going to get stomped. Just so you know,
she's completely okay with Ghidra killing her ex-husband.
Yes.
That. If you look at his emergence, she don't give a shit.
Yes.
Well, I think that's more because he's her ex-husband than anything else, really.
Hey, that man is a wolf expert, so we need to listen to whatever he
Have you noticed that in the movies, being that these are shorthand for like the ultimate hunk of burning love is a guy who's like anywhere out in the woods, like somehow watching wildlife through binoculars and a freaking helicopter comes and picks him up. That is a character that you are meant to love. I guarantee
Complete
you.
with cute animals like cuddling up to the camera and what have you.
Right.
Yep.
Or in this case, wolves eating a deer.
Well,
But
yes. Yes.
I have predisposed like let's be fair. Kyle Chandler, like he plays this with like gigantic amounts of intensity. Like he chews up so much scenery
Oh, yes.
in this movie. But I am predisposed to liking this guy because I was security on the last 2 seasons of Friday Night Lights. So I used to see Kyle Chandler just about every fucking day. So
Really?
anytime
No
I
way,
see
that's awesome.
yeah. So like anytime I see him in something, I'm like, good on you, dude. Still getting work. And
I got zero
you know-
complaints about him. I
I like
he's
him,
great
yeah.
'cause he's great. Like I like the fact that this is a guy in a monster movie. He plays it a bit big, like he's a little over the top at times, but I think when you're in a movie with Godzilla, you should go there. And then you have Ken Watanabe to bring it back down.
Oh
'cause
my
he's
God.
got all that gravitas.
Did an actor ever have so much dignity as Ken Watanabe? He is so amazing. He just like is dignity. It's sort of like I'd like a T-shirt that says something like "Lord, grant me the dignity of Ken Watanabe." He actually.
What's interesting to me is like he's playing, his character's named Dr. Serizawa, so he's named after the scientist who creates the oxygen destroyer in the original movie. What's not fascinating, but what I found interesting about that is he's actually the inverse of the Dr. Serizawa in the 54 Godzilla, because he saves Godzilla from the oxygen destroyer.
Yeah, so let's talk about that. You can explain what exactly he does to help this Godzilla, but I just want to reiterate what you said. The original Serizawa, as understood in 54 or 56, if you saw the one with Raymond Burr, if that even counts as another movie, and who knows. But he's he is a scientist who is hell-bent on helping Japan and helping the Earth, and he invents this thing, and he sacrifices himself so that the danger of the oxygen destroyer will never fall into the hands of everybody else. It's such a horrible, horrible weapon that he kills himself with Godzilla, so that nobody will learn its secrets. And that remains more or less the storyline, like forever, until the oxygen destroyer becomes a monster and destroy it. That's a long ways away.
What a waste of the oxygen destroyer, this film. What a waste. It was so sad.
Well, yes. And it's
fish.
super weird. It's super duper weird in this film because they got a new oxygen destroyer, which we don't know much about. And I'm not saying I'm complaining. I just don't know yet what I think about this. Serizawa here sacrifices himself, right, which he did before, for the good, which he did before. But it's a completely different reason. And I'm just trying to figure out, like, what were they thinking? Like, why did they decide, you know what? I think Serizawa, basically, no matter what universe you're in, that guy's going to commit suicide.
I don't know why they decided that, but I want to say that the reason he does in this movie, in case anybody's wondering, is because they killed Godzilla with their stupid oxygen destroyer, but not King Ghidorah. So then they're like, well, okay, Godzilla's not quite dead. He's like almost dead, but not quite dead. But I know what will wake him up is a nuclear explosion. But we can only figure out how to get it exactly where it needs to be if somebody delivers it in person instead of dropping it from above, which I totally didn't understand that part.
Oh, I could explain, but it doesn't matter. Go ahead, continue.
I mean, there's a series of misadventures on why they can't just shoot it his way. And that's
Tony, you were going to answer the other question, like, why is what is the deal with Serizawa?
Well, I mean, either way, so they decided that they need. So in the original 54 Godzilla, we've inverted it. We've gone through a whole arc where we've gone straight through the 70s. Yeah. So Godzilla's no longer. We're going to make him a hero again. We're going to make him king of the monsters, but also a hero. So killing him with the oxygen destroyer, you can't do that. So the sacrifice is still for the greater good of the planet.
Yeah.
And they do go, hey, maybe this nuclear thing, I don't know. Should we? But that's the main reason for his sacrifice. He still sacrifices himself for the greater good, but we can no longer do it to eliminate Godzilla because we need him. So there, and there's not as cool monster fights, which 54 Godzilla wasn't about monster fights. It was about
that's true.
The terror of humanity unleashing a thing unto itself that's worse than storms, worse than anything else, right? So that's the main thing. I thought it was really interesting. Again, the way that they kind of do things, there's a little bit of Destroya that ends up when Godzilla gets overcharged.
Yeah, that's true.
I mean, basically, they've decided to combine a lot of bits of a lot of movies into one. Although the thing that isn't in the other movies, I guess there's some secret civilizations. But I really love the underground, I guess, Atlantis of sorts, Lemuria,
whatever
it is.
That they destroy with a nuclear weapon.
I know, and they destroy Godzilla's house. He should be PO'd. Like that's
that
where Godzilla
really was amazing to me. Yeah, Godzilla. I think because Godzilla is a force of nature. I think he's ready to say goodbye to that ancient city because he gets up and he sort of makes his peace with all the little people on the boat looking at him. I also like that this Godzilla. In some wonderful tradition, is capable of being aware of people who are like 3 inches tall, comparatively to him. That is so cool.
One thing I saw, by the way, which I find fascinating. Go ahead, Drew, and then I'll talk.
Talking about in particular, like the sort of character of Godzilla in this, I feel like they did. It reminds me a lot of the Godzilla in the High Sea. Am I saying this right, Tony? High Sea series? High Say? Correct me.
I don't remember the different periods of Godzilla.
What is it, Tony? What is it said? Correct me.
If I'm
asking you to.
I don't want to get it wrong. So just say normal, because I'm not
the 90s Godzilla films. How about we'll say that series? Godzilla's kind of a moral, like he's not a bad guy, but he's not a good guy. He's kind of a really ambiguous character. The Godzilla in this leans a little bit more heroic than that, but they do have some of the ambiguity of that, which is actually kind of my preference with God. Like I don't want him to be outright bad, but I don't want him to be outright good. If that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, he's larger than all that stuff. You know what I mean? He's beyond simple ideas of good and bad. He doesn't care really if he is stepping on good people or stepping on bad people, and he might sort of have some bizarre fondness. We don't really know much about the intelligence of Godzilla, but he might have some fondness for humans, but is probably perfectly willing to accept a certain number of losses as he just sort of stomps around, and that's that's why he is godlike. He doesn't think of humans the way that we do.
By the way, Drew, now that I think about it, it's Heisei.
Thank you.
But yeah, I mean, I agree with you. I mean, even in 85, he kind of has that same, even though he's more of a force of nature, there's definitely awareness. But one thing I found hilarious was I saw one critique where someone was lamenting that the Hollow Earth. So for people who haven't seen it, and I don't know why you're listening if you haven't, or maybe we're spoiling it. But anyway, Godzilla explain why he can be so many different places so quickly, and it's because he's using tunnels through the Hollow Earth.
Right.
Somebody was saying, I can't believe they use such bunk as Hollow Earth. It's teaching people bad science. And I just laughed like, hey, if somebody is using a Godzilla film to enhance their science knowledge, I think those people probably aren't gonna be people you can change.
Yeah. Yes. Like Jason and I always like to say, but for this, it's a completely realistic film.
Yeah, but really? So you still honestly think somebody's going to? Well, I was on the fence, but this is this Godzilla film with a giant bird and a giant 3-headed space monster that can regenerate, and a Godzilla that we pretty much know atomic radiation doesn't make things big.
Right.
And all of these things, a gigantic version of a stealth bomber, all of these things, and someone goes, this really has convinced me, this Hollow Earth theory.
The funny thing is, he keeps saying Hollow Earth. For what it's worth, the Hollow Earth that Bradley Whitford is going on about is not the Hollow Earth that's truly crazy, although it's still
of course,
crazy.
That Hollow Earth has a black hole like sun in the middle of it.
Yeah,
and
what he's talking about is
inside of the crust.
There are big
like
tunnels that Bradley Whitford's theory is that there are giant tunnels that connect parts of the Earth, which, by the way, was also the thesis of a Drew Edwards story that I read once. So
yep. That is true.
You predated Godzilla, King of the Monsters.
Where's
I thought
my
that
money, Legendary Pictures?
Yeah, yes. You definitely need to sue those guys.
I mean, you're a double. You were part of a thing called the Monsterverse at one point, so
that's true.
True. I'm 2 for 2 with Legend. They should be happy I'm being so magnanimous about this.
I agree, but I really wish I got the Godzilla art book, and there's not nearly enough. I could get a Godzilla art book just of the Undersea Kingdom stuff from this film. I can't wait to still frame all of that. That civilization looked amazing, and
it makes me so sad. I hope they come up with just a stupid excuse that there was a twin city of that city that is somewhere else that they can keep going to. I just really, I know that sounds ridiculous, but who are we kidding? This is dumb stuff anyway. So I want to see that city, and I'm just annoyed that they blew it up.
It was beautiful.
I'm annoyed that this movie didn't have enough Rodan in it. That is a criticism I can lob it, because Rodan is probably my second favorite growing up, and Rodan's pretty cool in this, but there's not enough of him. Like, although his introduction scene may be the best scene in the whole movie. Sorry,
that was pretty bad.
He comes up from a Mexican volcano. I mean, Rodan probably also the first Latino monster, and that's pretty cool.
First are you talking about the first Latino monster? How is he Latino?
The first Latinx.
He comes from
he's in a Mexican volcano.
He's Latinx. Are you being politically correct about that?
Yes, he's the first Latinx kaiju. He comes bursting out of a fiery volcano in Mexico, and he's so. I love the new design of Rodan, where he seems to be on fire.
But does he speak Spanish? Is what I want to know.
I guess I can only imagine.
In as much as any of them speak, probably so.
Again, the fire Rodan is something from the 90s Godzilla movies, and
is it really?
I loved where they went with it. Yeah, it is, and I love where they went with it with this, where he's just constantly got this magma kind of dripping off of him. Like, it is a really cool design, and the three-way fight between him, Ghidorah, and Godzilla is impressive. I don't know how I feel about him ending up being Ghidorah's sort of sidekick, but whatever.
I mean, he's kind of that in the early movies too, though.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, there's several Rodans, because one of them gets its like, or am I thinking of Gauss and Gamera? I'm trying to think of the one where one of his wings gets sliced off.
I think that's one of the Gameras.
Yeah, now that I think about it, yeah.
But I think honestly, like, the reinventions, not to make this whole conversation about the monster designs, the reinventions of all three of the big Toho creatures. Like, first of all, I love the legendary Godzilla design. I know there's some people who think he's too chunky or whatever, but I fucking love the Monsterverse Godzilla. I think he is super cool looking. But I really like what they, this version of King Ghidorah is also extremely impressive and has quite a bit of Dragon Slayer the dragon from Dragon Slayer in him, and like the way he moves around and everything.
I'm with you.
And also,
Can
like,
you guys tell me
and
why
also-
he's called King Ghidorah and Godzilla is not called King Godzilla, even though he's king of the monsters?
well,
I
he's
don't
a
think
false
they ever.
king.
Nobody calls Godzilla King Godzilla. You know,
Yeah.
just like nobody
Godzilla
puts.
really is the king. Okay?
Just like there's no
And,
thee before God, you don't put king before Godzilla. You don't have to.
So why is Ghidorah called King Ghidorah?
Because it sounded cool, I guess. There's never. I think
what I
because
love
he-
is they
he
actually
kind
call
of
him
is
Monster
on his-
X at one point.
on his
which is
planet.
Monster Zero.
Monster
Yeah.
Zero. I'm
Monster
sorry.
Zero. Hell yeah.
Yeah.
But like I think this movie is probably the first movie where they could have had a rationale in that he's like a false king of
Yes.
sorts. But
So there's some irony to calling him King Ghidorah. I mean, you know,
Yeah.
why do we call King Kong, but he's Kong in the legendary universe. There's nobody would call him King Kong except ironically. And
I think you know, although they do name drop Mothra as Queen of the Monsters.
and
And
Mothra,
which I love.
let's talk about Mothra for a second. Oh, I agree with Tony. I got tears in my eyes when I heard the Mothra theme. I love the idea
sounded
that
really good.
she's shimmering because there are like millions and millions of moths that are catching the moonlight around her, and this is mind blowing. I mean, it's such a wonderful.
I didn't like the Mothra design when I first saw just a maquette of it, but now when I saw it in action in the movie, I have to say I really love what they did with her. I think she looked really great. And
it looks
although
cool.
I know there's some weird you know, from the Toho groups I'm on Facebook, there's some people upset that they kind of sort of made her and Godzilla a monster power couple. But you know, like whatever. It's a monster movie. A moth
exactly
and a, moth
whatever,
and,
and
a
it's more
dinosaur
just
can have a thing.
It's also there was just some fun dialogue. I mean, she does defend Godzilla though. Go ahead, Tony.
Also, that kind of tracks with the original movies, and a lot of people, just like anything now, everybody runs with everything on the internet.
Yeah.
Once that somebody named one of the King Ghidorah heads Kevin, everybody, it's just Kevin everything, and that's fine. You should like
the heads were great though.
No, that was awesome. And that was something you never got to see because there was not as much articulation.
Yes.
So having them fight and chomp at each other and all of that, that was really, really cool. I really enjoyed that. But I think that, you know, fandom can go, it's however you want it. You can say that fandom is out of control and that's not really how that is, or you can embrace it and really enjoy it. That's kind of, you know, choose your own adventure on that. It didn't bother me, and I think they've always had a weird closeness in the movies, even going back to the 60s, 70s. So none of that really seemed out of place.
Yeah. Oh, sure. Absolutely.
I have no problem with the idea that a giant moth and a radioactive dinosaur can have a thing because it's a monster movie.
Show a thing.
Not real. Yeah, like
or any. There's even implied anything other than these.
It's
are
just an alliance.
Yeah.
You said it right, Tony. It's like the internet. The internet will go with a funny joke, and then other crazy people will get offended by the joke and create a conversation that's much longer than it needs to be.
Why are people being offended by something that is, first of all, fantasy?
Yes.
And second of all, never something they're going to have to worry about in real life because Godzilla and Mothra not only don't exist, but will never exist.
Well, I think you've explained it. How many times have we had discussions about various, I don't know, Marvel, anything?
Yes.
That's what you like and you feel passionate about it. And
yeah,
I feel passionate about kaiju movies, especially. I just don't feel like arguing on the internet, I guess is the main difference. But yeah, I mean, again, people are gonna like it however they like it, and I think it's cool that there's that kind of buy-in. How many growing up, that's what made us want to do things like be on a podcast talking about monster movies, is all the times we talked to our friends growing up, right? So, and how we talk to each other now, even. But I don't know. I don't see having a problem with that. It's weird to me But if you have a, hey, this is my version, again, it goes back to what's your version of Godzilla.
Yeah.
For a lot of people, it's a lot of different things. It could be, hey, that's cool. I watched that when I was a kid. Or I continue to watch these movies because they bring me joy. Or I want to see a cool monster movie. What's up with these giant monsters? I kind of want to see them, action figures bashed together, basically. It really, or if you go, hey, I'm a purist, I only really like 54 because I think that was, there's so much going on there metaphorically, and the way that tale is told. If you just want to be a purist in that, that's cool too. You don't have to be around for, Minya teaches a kid how to fight bullies,
which came pretty darn fast after 1954.
Like, who am I to say enjoy whatever you like?
Can I just point out, Tony?
Think that,
I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Well, I think that what you said is much more mature than where my mind usually goes, because I was thinking, people get stuck on their one reading and they should be open to many more. Godzilla being I think you said Godzilla is a Rorschach test, the way that Dracula is a Rorschach test, and there's a million different variations.
Yeah.
But actually, you just said it even better, which is the world is a big place. And so if you want to be one of those people who only likes Godzilla as a metaphor for the atomic bomb and only likes Dracula as a metaphor for racist terror of the Victorians, that's okay. Nobody's going to bother you. And I actually need to take my judgment away. If people want to feel that way, they can feel that way. That's a really, really, because I always want to argue and go, oh no, your mind should expand to take in all these different ones, but it doesn't have to. They can like whatever they like. Yeah, you're totally right.
Don't be a dick about it.
Right.
That's the bottom line. Just don't be an asshole when somebody goes, I think Godzilla is only this form.
Yeah.
If you both, or however many people, want to have a discussion about it and truly have a discussion, cool. If you want to be a dismissive asshole or a pushy asshole, don't do that. Just stop. I mean, I know I'm tilting at windmills as far as the internet goes these days, but that's really how I feel. We can all agree to disagree, especially in something, it's giant monsters. It's like,
yes.
If you're not having fun, I'm sorry, find something you have fun with. If it's not this, that's cool. But
have you noticed how there is a tendency to get preachy when you don't like something? I always find this fascinating. It's like if you're a person who like, you don't like Godzilla, so you, instead of just like, I never really cared for Godzilla, or Mia never really found an interest in Game of Thrones, that's good enough. But sometimes people will want to, like, they get defensive, so it'll be like, and in this day of whatever, of Me Too, we should really be concentrating on things like that and not wasting our time. In other words, there's a tendency to sort of go on the offensive and say and say we shouldn't be wasting time with stuff. But
I have to, speaking of, because we discussed it earlier, I even have to preface that. Like, there's friends of mine who have seen so many people who go, I need to watch Game of Thrones.
Yes.
When I say I haven't watched Game of Thrones, I immediately follow up with, I just haven't gotten around to it.
No, same here. I feel like any day now or any year now, I'll watch it. Yeah, exactly.
Please don't think I'm in the camp of I'm too good for this. I have the Criterion channel, and I said that those prints of the Godzilla movies, the older Godzilla movies on Criterion channel, look amazing.
Yeah.
I cannot tell you how many times I've put on Godzilla versus Megalon, which is a ridiculous film. It's also ridiculously fun.
I agree.
My enjoyment of things is certainly not based on a scale of this is the most important, because
one thing I've often thought is now that we've been doing this show for longer than I care to admit, somebody will come out of a movie and I'll see them the next day and I'll say, how was that movie? That was the worst movie I've ever seen. That was a very bad movie. And maybe I'll see the movie or maybe I won't, but I can usually casually say, I won't say it to them because it sounds like you're being a dick, but it's like, no, my friend, I know what a bad movie looks like. I know what a bad movie is. And let me tell you, it's very unlikely that what you saw that was released in a theater today in 2019 and coming from a major studio is a truly bad movie. That's probably just a mediocre movie.
But again, you're colored by the fact that you watch. There's the possibility that as much media as you watch, as many films as you watch, I am certainly not the everyman. I go to Fantastic Fest and watch 40 movies in a week. 40 movies plus. So my enjoyment of movies and how I think about them is colored in a huge way.
Yeah.
Whereas you could go, hey, I've seen a bad movie. I don't know how many people, like, maybe that is the worst thing they've seen in a long time or
So it's a
ever.
really super good point.
Because,
like, think about that
I don't know.
movie, The Devil's Wedding Night, that we saw. This is the kind of conversation that happened that I think about all the time. Where The Devil's Wedding Night, that was one of those crazy Italian movies where there's a sexy vampire in a castle. It was made in the 70s. Elvira showed it because she could get it super cheap. Perfectly serviceable, cheesy Italian vampire movie. And I hate to use the word cheesy, actually, for a perfectly serviceable Italian vampire movie. And but it is. But if I were to grab some friends of mine, people I respect, smart people I work with, and say, hey, y'all, let's all go watch 1973, The Devil's Wedding Night, I think what I'd hear from them is slow, incomprehensible. I didn't understand anybody's motivation, needlessly exploitative.
To which you go, the motivation is vampires. And that's fine too. But I don't know. I think you're right. But in this case, to me, it's all about, I got what I wanted out of this movie because there were giant monsters.
Yes.
There was a lot of interesting fan service. I do think it's interesting. And I mean, there's actually Mothra twins that they just throw out there.
Yeah.
Like, by the way, I'm a twin.
By the way, the monster twins are here. Yeah, okay.
Even though they're
Julia,
adults,
I don't know if we talked about this.
Yeah.
But and I don't know why I'm picking on Julia, but I assume that you are not a huge Mothra fan. I did not even notice this until the second time I had watched this movie.
Sorry, huge what fan? I'm having a little trouble hearing.
Mothra.
Yeah.
So
no, I didn't love Mothra. I thought that that it was just. I mean, I think it was beautiful to look at, absolutely. But personally, because I do find the monsters to be so believable, I find it really hard to believe that she wouldn't just be shredded to pieces in 2 seconds and like set on fire. So she doesn't feel like she's really in the fight the way that she would be.
Well, she has like that stabby tail. I mean, she stabs her
I
dead.
know. No, she gets in her, definitely, gets in her punches. I'm just saying, I didn't find it believable that she wouldn't have just been just shredded and pretty quickly. I want to say real quick too, what I was saying earlier about the people. So the humans during these fights are flying around in these planes and these helicopters, and it feels like it's the scene in Monty Python where the guy's running and then he's running again at the same point. Like he's always running up that same hill, because these planes will take off and be flying away, and they will not have gotten more than like a few feet, it looks like, when during the fight. They're just keep trying to get, and they're almost almost getting grabbed. And then the same thing with the helicopter at the end when they're leaving. They are watching this battle, and then the nuclear explosion that is Godzilla goes off, and presumably they have to be far enough away that they don't get like killed or even thrown by this blast, yet somehow they're close enough that they can watch the whole show of Godzilla being worshipped by all the new titans that have come up, and they're now bowing to him, and they're still watching for minutes and minutes, and there's just no way they could see that with their naked eye if they're far enough away to have gotten away from that blast. So it's things like that just bug the crap out of me, where I was like, this isn't real.
There's a ton of tropes like that actually did bug me. The fact that nobody seems to, even when they say, I'm going to go away from this, seems to run at all. They all watch things. They also, the thing that bugged me, I like the director a lot. I think it's cool. However, the trope of getting saved the last moment as a car tumbles towards you or a monster's about to stomp you, you get like 1 or 2 before you don't get 5 of them.
Yeah, it happens over and over.
At any point in time,
and like you said about the
everybody's
thing where they're trying to run away, like you actually see Millie Bobby Brown they're all watching when when another explosion happens when they're on the ground, and all this dust and dirt comes toward them, but none of them. Not only do they not shield their faces and turn away, they don't even close their eyes. And Millie Bobby Brown's standing there with her mouth open and doesn't seem to get any dust in her mouth. And then at another point, there's another super bright explosion, and they don't even squint. Like they're not so clearly they're not seeing anything real, and that part was so obvious to me. That bugged me. That kind of thing.
About that stuff, the one thing that, and I may be alone in this. This might be something that only I bothers me, but the part the part towards the end where like the soldiers are coming out of the helicopter and the entire first wave of soldiers is vaporized by Ghidorah's lightning breath. Why would you continue to run out there after you saw that? Like, I don't believe any human person. I think the rest of those soldiers would be like, nope, dude, you find your own daughter.
Yeah, they get blown up like in War of the Worlds. Just like, yes, that effect should have been done more in this movie because that was actually pretty damn cool.
Well, when like there's
Ghidorah blows up. Yeah, go ahead.
There's been some smack talk about like the fact that Ghidorah flies around in like this hurricane. And I guess I get it because people wanted a clearer look at him at times. But since he's somebody I've always kind of associated with lightning, I thought that was kind of appropriate, I guess. And
sure,
I thought that was kind of a cool nod to the fact that he does breathe out lightning. Unrelated to any of that, though, since we are talking about the climactic battle of this movie, I really would love to talk to somebody from Boston about how they feel about the ending of this movie.
I'm sure that they love it, just like the Houstonites love seeing Houston get nuked in I'm sorry, what Independence
Day. No, when we watched Independence Day, we watched it in Houston, everybody cheered when Houston got blown up.
Oh,
I
yes.
don't know. Bostonians are a breed apart. They may be pissed off about it.
They might
again in Godzilla movies, a lot of the things you see destroyed where there are like featured buildings or featured things, those are usually the hot, cool building that either got completed or got a lot of press that year. So when you see like, oh, there's this building, looks very iconic, or here's a giant Ferris wheel, or any number of things. A friend of mine from Japan told me, he filled me in on that was cool this year. Or the year that this was filmed. So
I can totally see that
anyway. And then people go, hey, look, it's cool that thing got destroyed.
They did thank the city of Boston in this in the credits. So and also
letting Godzilla stomp your town.
also all the monsters were credited as themselves.
That's really
good,
cool,
actually.
I just want to point out there are some beautiful visuals in this film. I mean, when I think back to the 2014 Godzilla, the only thing that pops into my mind, and I'm serious, the only thing that pops into my mind is the feeling of weight when Godzilla is like poking at the suspension bridge in San Francisco and the Golden Gate Bridge, and is poking at it to see if maybe it's breakable. I thought that was brilliant, and Tony, I remember commenting on that. But I don't remember any visuals. This movie has a lot of interesting visuals, and one of them is this sort of crazy bat out of hell cover moment when Ghidorah like throws up his wings and there's like lava and fire everywhere.
That looked amazing. Like, and all the concept art that's based
Night on Bear Mountain is just like, that was fantastic.
I think in part that's because this is the director of Trick or Treat and the director of Krampus, and obviously if you've seen those movies, that this is a guy that has very much a visual flair, whereas Gareth Edwards, is a solid director, but if you look at the movie he did before Godzilla, that monsters, it was mostly two people talking to each other. It didn't have quite the same visual language
Yes.
that the two movies that Doherty has done. And I also he has a career in special effects before becoming a director, so I think he not only understands like the visual appeal of monsters but also how to make them look good. And
Right.
like whatever your criticisms of this movie, like the monsters who are the real stars look terrific.
There's another aspect of Ghidra I want to point out that isn't any cleverness on my part. It's actually just laid out for you by the movie. But the musculature of Ghidra, as he's designed, is patterned after the William Blake drawing of the Red Dragon. That's amazing. I mean, how cool is that? That it actually, like the muscles rippling on his shoulders and everything, literally look like the Red Dragon painting, the same one that featured prominently in the movie Red Dragon. So that if you're a movie fan, you also, it kind of comes full circle. You get to see this painting celebrated a couple times, so that's cool.
I agree. And I'm a man in the suit person as well, but I will say the CG looked really good in this film.
It does look good. So there are no puppets. So let me ask a stupid question. There's no puppets at all. There's no moment when I'm looking at puppets, like when Godzilla is biting off Ghidorah's heads. These are just completely CG creations.
I personally I always prefer a combination. I think it would have been really interesting and cool to have that be a thing. I lament that a little bit, to be honest. However, if you're gonna go all CG, I can say that at least it looks this good.
It looks so good that it fools the mind. It feels physical.
For me, I wouldn't go that far.
It fools my mind. They feel physical to me. Yeah.
I think that they really did a great job. If you're not going to have practical and CG, touching it up, at least it's what we got, because it could have been a lot worse, and for that I'm really thankful. I would have preferred, just craft wise and the way it looks, I enjoy the weight of practical effects and how that all works out. But with practical effects, I'm not sure you would have been able to get all of that, like for example the crazy interaction between the three Ghidra heads.
With
a lot of work you could do that. It's true, but that's a lot of work. I'm not sure if it's more work than animating it with that level of detail, but
I think you would need like a Jim Henson type puppeteer. Like I think that would go well beyond like even or a Ray Harryhausen stop motion animator. Like I think that the level of detail, like
I agree,
it can be done in practical because we've seen it. Like I think about like Little Shop of Horrors, how lifelike Audrey 2 is in that, but it certainly would have been a lot more. I think it's a lot more work, and this how much of your budget is going to go to something like that. So
CG is not cheap though, but you're talking about a different economy of scale. I wish that there was more of that, but I'm not unhappy with what we got.
This whole movie had a budget, I presume we're leaving out marketing, a budget of somewhere between $170 and $200 million. So we can assume that huge, vast quantities of that are just manpower making stuff.
Sure.
Animators and modelers. And
looking at the credits, it's very obvious. How many... There's a lot of people putting blood, sweat, and tears into.
Just think about it. Each one of Ghidra's head probably has its own modeling and animating crew. Just every single one. Somebody's in charge of every one of the Titans. Some team is. I wanted to mention the Argo really quickly. So Monarch, this enormous. That's the other thing in this movie. We have just completely lost our senses, and as far as like realism, and I mean this in the best possible way. Monarch is full on G.I. Joe. They have more money than God. They have multiple like compounds. They have underground cities, and they have a ship that is so big that I'm not even convinced you could land it anywhere except maybe the desert. It would have to be, well north of 350 feet wide. It is huge. This is the ship that they are on, the so-called Argo, is bigger than any plane that flies. And it has, it has room in its hangar for like multiple 80-foot wide helicopters.
I love it because I've been a big fan of the video game series Ace Combat.
Yeah.
And eventually those kind like big huge planes like that appear and you fight them and have to take them out. And so seeing one of those in a Godzilla movie or seeing a similar thing in a Godzilla movie was pretty awesome, I have to admit.
It looks really cool. Well, that probably takes us to the end. We should get our final thoughts on Godzilla King of the Monsters. And if there's anything that we failed to mention, we can always bring it up on the Facebook page or next week when we come back with more Godzilla, because this is actually just the beginning of our Godzilla discussion. And I know that we've kind of recapped ourselves, so we'll make it pretty quick. The order that we went was Tony, Julia, Drew, and then I'll go. So Tony, final thoughts, Godzilla King of the Monsters.
Like I said, I really enjoyed it. It had tons of more monsters. I don't think the human stuff is as bad as some other actual Godzilla movies from Japan. It could have been better. And like I said, I thought the humor that they tried to inject with the two scientists was cringeworthy at best for me.
Mm-hmm.
The actors are doing the best with that material. But it didn't work for me. If it worked for other people, cool in the gang. You know, as a writer myself, I don't like criticize people's stuff too much, but I really disliked that part. However, it was made up for with some really great, cool characters that were in Monarch, and counterbalanced by huge monster fights, and a great soundtrack as well. Other than I don't really like the new cover of the Blue Oyster Cult song, but again, to each his own. Yeah, I can't wait. I'm with Drew. I can't wait for the Blu-ray, and I wish I had more. I got the art book, but I wish I had at least a book or another half a book of Undersea Kingdom stuff, because that was beautiful.
Very good. Julia, final thoughts.
Can you hear me okay?
Oh, yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So first of all, the song in the credits, I don't know the Blue Oyster Cult song. I have to go back and listen to it. I really enjoyed that song. I thought it was awesome because I love the chanting. I thought it was really fun.
That's one of the things I hate. But again, to each your own.
Well, anyway, I really enjoyed it. I thought it was really fun. It made me want to jump up and down. So I like the chanting. I like the drums. But the thing is, I'm not used to that kind of stuff. So it could be that, Tony, that you've heard a good version or something, or like you've heard stuff that's similar and that you like. I don't know. But anyway, I enjoyed that. But what I was gonna say is that the film to me is it is the monsters, it's the Titans, it's how great the effects are, it's how fun the fights are. The people there, I could take or leave. I really like Millie Bobby Brown. I thought she was a great actor. I thought she was just so fun. I love the twist of Emma being crazy, as far as in terms of like homicidal maniac, basically, like having to kill the world. And I thought Kyle Chandler was okay and fun, and I like Bradley Whitford. I agree that the character's overdone as far as like the silly lines and whatever, but I'm not a fan of, like I said, how the reactions are, how the people just that felt less realistic to me than the monsters. So, but I really enjoyed it. It was a lot of fun.
That's wonderful. Thank you. Drew, final thoughts.
Well, I wanted to add, for what it's worth, Julia, like I think it works as an end credits song. I don't want to fan the flames of debate too much. I'm largely indifferent to it, but for what it's worth, Julia, Jamie also really likes it. So in fact, she says she prefers
Jamie is an awesome musician, so I take that as absolute affirmation.
Hey.
I'm not saying you're not.
What do you think I do?
I'm saying it's nice to have the affirmation of another awesome musician.
I'm joking with you.
What have I done? For what it's worth, she also said she likes it better than the Blue Oyster Cult original, which I think is crazy talk. But I love her anyway.
So just
all that aside,
I will say though, I have seen Fu Manchu close with their version of Godzilla, and I'm a little bit tainted by that because it was a face melting, amazing concert experience. So I could be colored by stuff like that, and I've also seen Blue Oyster Cult do it. So maybe that's on me.
We can like all versions. We can like all versions or none. We don't have to like any of them.
That is true as well.
But final thoughts. I have no criticisms of this movie other than the fact that it should have had like 50% more Rodan. You know, like
Yeah.
that's literally the only thing that I did not like about this movie. It's definitely the best American movie. Out of the Godzilla movie I have seen recently, and yes, I am including the anime and Shin Godzilla in this. Favorite. And I know that's like gonna go down hard in some circles. I don't fucking care. I loved this movie. I can't wait to watch it again. And it's at me that I can't go watch it again after talking about it. So I might do something impulsive, like go get a Godzilla tattoo or something.
All right, rock on. I have nothing to add to this. I think we've had a great discussion of it, and I enjoyed it a lot. And I can't wait, because I don't really know exactly what Godzilla movies we're going to be discussing going forward, but I guarantee it's going to be a fascinating conversation. I'm tempted to go to Shin Godzilla, which I'm given to understand is the talkiest Godzilla that has ever been. I don't know if that's true or not, but I guess we'll find out. So, pardon me. I was about to sneeze and I didn't. So, okay. All right. That means that we should move to our endorsements. And it's been quite a while since we've done any endorsements. I don't know if you guys are prepared for it, but lay it on me. What have you got to share with us? Tony, we'll start with you. What's going on?
Let's see. I've been playing a lot of the Spider-Man game for PS4, which I'm late to the game for, but it's amazing. The web swinging mechanic and the versions they have of the characters that's some of my favorite Spider-Man ever, actually. I also just got today AGFA, the American Genre Film Archives Wakaliwood Super Action DVD Blu-ray combo. Wakaliwood, you can look it up. This collection of people in Africa are doing super low budget films. However, they do it with the gusto that I wish more creatives
Yes.
had. This is a place where sometimes they don't have electricity for parts of the week. They cobble together laptops. They're building things out of whatever parts, car parts, and it is an amazing ride. I don't like these films ironically. I truly think this is not The Room. This is not the things people like to laugh at. I truly enjoy what they're making, even though it isn't traditionally what people think of as, oh, that's good quality, but their passion wins out, and I highly recommend. Also, it's colored by they get a guy who is a video jockey. He's like a comedian, and he talks over it in order to present it to people who may not be able to hear the whole thing, or it's this whole way that they present movies there, because there's no theaters, and that part is fascinating as well, because he's a constant just quipping various things over the movies. But I really think you should get this. You should check out what Wakaliwood is, and I think that if you love outsider film, this double feature of Who Killed Captain Alex and Bad Black is something that you at least should check out at some point. So, and just support these people doing film in an area where, nobody thought they would do film.
That's wonderful. That's really
amazing.
wonderful. Thank you. Julia, what do you have to endorse for us?
Gosh, I have watched, the other times I've been like, oh, I haven't really watched anything, or I haven't really taken anything. This time I've watched so many things, so many. Because my kids were with their grandparents, and we bought we got the AMC A-list. We've been watching movies. But as far as what I want to actually endorse,
By the way, is that
I'm
your
gonna go
endorsement?
with
Is the
Good
A-list in general?
Omens,
I'm sorry, go ahead.
which is the David Tennant and Michael. What's his last name? And if you're saying it, I can't hear you. I'm sorry.
No, but it's, oh gosh, no, I'm sorry. He played the Prime Minister in Frost Nixon, and he played the DJ in Tron 2, and
Well, he's from Masters of Sex.
and he's in Masters of Sex, yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, I'm trying to find his name real quick for you. But that show was so fun. I mean, it's a little bit silly, honestly.
Michael
I thought it was
Sheen.
going to. Sorry?
Michael Sheen.
That's it. Yeah, Michael Sheen. I thought it was really silly and more silly than I expected it to be, as far as just kind of, a little bit dumb in some places, but so fun. I mean, I really enjoyed it. Gosh, David Tennant is just so delicious, and he's just basically the doctor if the doctor was a devil or a demon, and anyway, so it's just a really really fun little quasi gay romance between this devil and this angel. And it is gay, but it's quasi romance. Romance. And they just are messing around throughout the ages of the earth. It was such a fun show. I binge watched it and just really enjoyed it a lot. So that's my endorsement. We did watch Dark Phoenix and didn't hate it, didn't love it, so I'm not going to really go anywhere with that one. And the same for Men in Black. I mean, I laughed a few times. I thought the acting was good, but it wasn't the best Men in Black movie I've watched. So, I don't really have anything else that I want to really push so much, but except for that.
Good. Thank you very much.
By the way, the book version of Good Omens I highly recommend as well. But I think this adaptation is great. They did a good job of updating things that you couldn't even really think about it in the book at the time. So I recommend that as well, and I agree with you. It's pretty awesome.
When we get around to me, I want to make a footnote about the A-list, actually. Drew, lay it on us. What do you got?
Well, this is a bit of a weird endorsement because it's not an endorsement of like a thing or a place or even a person per se, although it does involve someone who came up to me. I was at Greater Austin Comic-Con this last weekend, and I was a panelist. Several panels, and there was a father there with his son. He brought his son to my second panel. He was at several panels, but the last one he brought his son to, and he came up to me before my last panel, and he told me I was on a writing panel with Sean McKeever and several other comic book writers, and when I was on the panel, I did end up talking about my car accident and the resulting I have post-traumatic stress disorder, I have dissociative identity disorder, I have anxiety, and how that sort of features into my writing. And I don't really feel like I can talk about my writing without talking about like my psychological makeup. And this father, he came up to me before I started speaking at the last panel I was on, and he told me how and grateful for somebody being very open about the sort of struggle of that, and how he felt like that was something that needed to be destigmatized and talked about more, but also that you can go through stuff like that and then channel it towards some good, and that his son has a lot of anxiety, and also that he has a brother with post-traumatic stress disorder who was a vet. And I just was so moved by that because, I'll be honest, like when I do these panels, half the time when I'm with it, I'm filled with the nuisance of anxiety because I'm worried that I've said the wrong thing. People always tell me that I'm well-spoken, but I don't really feel that way inside. Like I always feel like, oh my gosh, I just made an ass out of myself. So like the fact that that was someone's takeaway from that was really moving to me. And what I would like to say now, if I may get serious for 1 second, we've been talking a lot about Godzilla and fun things, but like if you are, don't obviously do anything that makes you feel uncomfortable, but if you are somebody that struggles with your mental health or being neuroatypical or anything like that in any way, sometimes the best things we can do for other people is make it part of the discussion and sort of take away that stigma that is about there is about it that makes it harder to talk about it in public, and that makes people have preconceived notions of what social issues will be like, because pop culture unfortunately is really working towards creating this image that everybody's going to be unable to be a functional member of society, or that you're dangerous, or anything like that. So I really took a lot away from what that man said to me, and I was very grateful, and I'm grateful that he felt that way about the way I was talking about it. But also, like, I hope that maybe some of the people who listen to this podcast, because I'm sure people out there they might have similar experiences, that they can hear me saying this now, and maybe they'll, if they're comfortable with it, try to be more open and talking about it, because it is the only real way that we can educate neurotypical people to understand maybe what it's like, that to share the world with people who aren't, while they might look outwardly like everybody else, they're the way they experience the world and what their day-to-day life is like is probably different. And I think it's a really important issue, and it's going to continue to become a more and more important issue. So I don't want to spend like the entirety of the end of the show on a soapbox or whatever, but I did just want to say that, and say that it was moving and it was important to me.
I think it's fantastic when people share their story of pain or their story of whatever challenge with other people, because inevitably it's going to benefit someone. You do have to be brave to do that, because of course there are going to be people who are going to mock you or shun you or judge you or whatever, but there's always going to be somebody who's going to really get a lot out of it. We share a lot of really personal stuff in our marriage ministry talk, and inevitably somebody comes up afterwards and goes, "Thank you so much for sharing that, because it was really like exactly what I've been going through. Exactly, I got so much out of what you said." So I think it's worth the risk, because the risk is usually just, like I say, that somebody will either be a jerk, or people won't get it. But I think it's way more valuable to be able to connect with that person who really needed to hear that they weren't alone in that.
Mm-hmm.
I think you're absolutely right. I think it's really the only way going forward with this issue. And again, I that just made my whole weekend. Like, I very seldomly get feedback like that at conventions, and that I'm not saying I need that or whatever, but the fact that somebody thought to say that, and that it was important to them at all, like, it meant a lot. And like, I will definitely be more, I will definitely be mindful of that going forward. And again, I hope it does inspire other people.
Wonderful. My only endorsement, actually, one really wonderful thing I listened to is a podcast that I just think is fantastic, which is called the Adaptcast, which is this fantastic couple who read a book, any given book, Parent Trap, Dracula, whatever, and then they talk about movies based on it, or they'll watch an original movie and then they'll talk about the adaptations of it, and so forth. And so, like, a favorite episode of mine was Little Women. They read the book Little Women, they talked about what's in it, and then they discussed like every major film version. And their last two episodes are Jane Eyre parts 1 and 2, because they read Jane Eyre and they watched, I'm not making this up, 9 different versions of Jane Eyre, which is a lot of Jane's Eyre, especially when 2 of them were television miniseries that went like 4 or 11 hours long. And it's just really great. This is a very charming show, and I really love it. And it's called the Adaptcast, and that I think they're fantastic. The other thing I would mention is the A-list. Julia mentioned that. So the funny thing is, the only negative thing I could say about the AMC A-list is that they're capable of doing it because they're such a big and powerful exhibitioner. But it's a much better deal than the Movie Pass that was around for a while, because where I am, to see Godzilla in the 3D version was like $16, but the A-list gets you at least 3 movies, up to 3 movies a week at 22 or 24 bucks a month, depending on if you want to have multi-state, like if you're going to be traveling around or not. And so it pays for itself in like 2 movies, and in the summer there's all these movies. So it's a really it's really a good deal, and it changes it over, and it makes it more likely that you will wind up watching smaller films in the theater. Something where you're like, I may as well go to the movies. So far, the AMC A-list is like working out really great for us. I don't know if we'll do it for forever or for a really long time, but right now we're enjoying it very much. And the last thing I'll mention is we are just 2 weeks from the release of the Castle of Horror anthology. So this is a project a long time coming. It's finally going to be out on your Kindle, and we're also going to have a paperback version. We've got a lot of great writers, including Dark Shadows, Laura Parker, and Kevin J. Anderson, and David Bowles, who shows up on the show all the time, and me. I have a story in there. There's like 18 stories, so you definitely got to check it out. And we will be back with another volume, probably at the end of the year. So this will be the first of many. So that's my necessary plug for the book that's based on the name of the show. All right, guys, thank you so much for being on. It's been so much fun discussing Godzilla, King of the Monsters. I cannot wait to be back next week, whatever the heck it is that we're going to discuss. And I hope you guys are safe and have a happy week. Bye.
Good night.
Thanks,
Night.
Night.
Good night.